E-box for the main power switch is on the left side of Meclift ML1812R. On E-box locates battery main switch, button for cabin lift, and auxiliary battery connector for jump starting and charge connection. If the white signal light on the E-box is on, the engine's selective catalytic reduction is performing automatic regeneration. Wait until regeneration is finished and the signal light is off before turning off power from the main switch. On the left-hand side is the gear lever. Selection are manual, automatic, operation drive direction, actual, highest gear, and gear lever lock switch. Forwards-backwards movement of the lever sets the driving direction of the machine accordingly. The center position of the lever sets the transmission to neutral. Operators can choose between the automatic and manual function of the transmission by pressing the end of the lever. At manual function, the gear is selected by turning the lever according to 4 numbers on it. When on automatic, turning the lever will set the greatest gear in range. Even as there are 4 gears on the switch, there are only 3 speeds in the transmission. If the 4th gear is selected, the transmission stays on the 3rd. The gear lever can be locked to a neutral position to prevent turning gear on by accident. The multifunction lever on the right side of the steering column controls a variety of functions. Forwards-backwards movement switches the turning signals. When in traffic, it is good to notice that there is no automatic switch off of the turning signal. Pulling upwards of the lever switches between headlight, high, and low beams. Turning the lever handle will switch between a variety of windscreen wiper speeds. Pressing the lever handle inwards will activate the windscreen washer. Pushing the button in the tip of the lever will activate the signal horn. Steering column adjustment used to adjust the angle and the height of the steering wheel. Switch panel includes switches for driving lights, work lights cabin, work lights lifting frame, work lights rear, beacon, hazard flasher, cabin lights, parking brake, engine start-stop, ignition lock, dashboard display. Joystick's functions are lift, reach, tilt, forks in, out, forks left, right, auxiliary hydraulic pump, cabin lifting and lowering. Automatic fork leveling. Dashboard displays AC sheets can adjust, fan speed, air temperature, compressor on/off, air intake plus presets. Presets are from the top windscreen defrost, maximum cooling power, and the operator favorite. Automatic tilt control adjusts the machine program tilt so the angle of the forks to the frame remains the same. If the function is switched off when the load is lowered, the fork will tilt down. Risk of falling under load. Function is recommended to be kept on the head whenever operating with forks. General Settings driver can adjust joysticks. Throttle pedals and clutch cut-off sensitivity. Enable fork positioning select language and view warnings. And automatic tilt control. Form information sheet driver can find daily inspection points, hoisting instruction and capacity diagram. For display can be viewed also inputs and outputs of the logic units, maintenance sheet, which is only for maintenance personnel authorized by Meclift or in a direct consultation with Meclift. Be careful while entering, exiting the cockpit. Use 3-point contact, i.e. 1 hand and 2 feet, or 2 hands and 1 foot, to minimize the risk of slipping, falling, and tripping. Keep the walkway over the engine housing clear of obstacles. Snow, mud, and/or slippery stains must be removed from the walkway to provide safe passage. Use suitable and approved fall protection, if any maintenance work is needed to be done on an elevated position. Operating of the machine is allowed only to trained personnel and only in the way it is designed for. Check that there are no unnecessary people nearby machine or load during operation. Get familiar with the capacities and limitations of the machine and accessories. Learn the safest way of operation. Do not remove the covers of the machine while the engine is running. Follow all the safety regulations, both of the machine and your company. Do not leave the engine running during refueling. While servicing the machine, never leave the engine running unless it is required for the service. Always check the condition of the machine and all the equipment before use. It is strictly prohibited to make any alterations to the machine without consulting the manufacturer. Be careful not to leave hands, feet, or fingers between the engine housing doors. Make sure, before starting the engine, that the parking brake is switched on from the cabin and the gear is on neutral. The safety belt must be used while operating the machine. Reflection of noise in the container or other reflective surface can raise the noise level. Hearing protection must be used. When using hearing protection, communication between the operator and the assistants must ensure that no incidents occur. The sound intensity may exceed 80 dBA. Normal operating conditions are the following: driving, traveling and lifting on substantially firm, smooth, level and consolidated surfaces. The surface conditions on which the truck is designed to operate. The surface quality should be stable, even, and not immersed ground. See Section 4 of the manual, Longitudinal Load Moment Indicator and Stability Control. Driving with the load center of gravity approximately at the middle of the truck sideways. Traveling with the boom retracted and, if fork arms are fitted, with these tilted backwards and both with and without a load. The load in the designated travel position with a visibility superior to driving direction. The use of a sound signal is desirable if it is to be assumed that there may be people in the blind spots. Never pass underneath a lifted load or let any other to do so. Never lift a load over personnel. Only persons related to the work are allowed on the working area. Particular care must be taken when loading out the load to prevent the burden from falling and breaking down. Attention! Keep limbs away from the fork carriage if the forklift working. When using the machine, there is a risk for serious bodily injury due to the moving parts. When replacing the lifting equipment, the operator must be familiar with the lifting gear and its safe release and attachment. Be careful that the lifting equipment does not fall over when detached from the machine. Use a dedicated stand where applicable. Before attaching the safety pins of the lifting equipment, make sure that the lifting equipment is properly seated in the fork carriers. Wrongly seated lifting equipment may shift or fall suddenly. When lifting a load with a high surface area, account must be taken of the effect of the wind. The load must be kept as low as possible, and the transfer carried out using moderate driving speeds. Avoid sudden accelerations and decelerations, especially when load is lifted and when operating in confined spaces. Do not fully stress the engine and the hydraulics before the engine has reached its operating temperature. The recommended lifting height while transferring the load is about 30 centimeters from the ground. The usage of higher lifting light, for example for better visibility, is allowed only on even surfaces. When doing so, the operator has to be extremely careful and to constantly observe the stability of the machine. If lifting is found technically demanding or visibility restricted, a lifting plan must be made before starting to work. When visibility is restricted, a signaling person or a camera must be used to ensure safe operation. Never lift the load by only one fork. Applying the full lifting force to only one fork may damage both the fork and the lifting mechanism. Never push against the load in full power, for example, to ram the forks under it. This could damage the lifting mechanism. This machine is designed only for lifting, transferring, and stacking. When using other lifting tools than forks, the instructions in the operation manual for the tool in use must be followed. When lowering a load from a high position, it is recommended to first retract the booms before lowering. This ensures the stability of the machine. Turn off the engine before leaving the cabin. This ensures that the parking brake is switched on. Do not leave the load lifted when leaving the cabin. If you leave the machine forks and boom without load in the lifting position, make sure that third parties can't be injured by colliding with the elevated parts of the machine. Maintain always the large enough clearance to other vehicles and obstacles to avoid emergency braking. Bridges, hills, tight corners, tunnels, and railroads demand extra attention. All laws and instructions concerning traffic must be taken into account. Bring the machine to stop using the operating brake before changing the direction. Observe the height of the machine and the load when operating in a low environment. Transporting other personnel apart from the operator is strictly forbidden unless suitable equipment is installed. To ensure the safe and problem-free operation of the machine, follow the service schedule included. Do not use open fire to check the fuel level. Avoid the sparking of the batteries. Never disconnect the batteries unless the main power switch is switched off. The engine must be stopped during servicing and surveying unless the running is required for the operation at hand. Never open the cap of the expansion tank when the engine is hot. Hot coolant can cause severe injury. Report any faults instantaneously to management or maintenance personnel. If the machine is falling over, keep tight on the steering wheel. Do not try to get out of the cabin. If any warning is given, the machine must be stopped immediately to check the situation. The reason for the warning must be found out, and it should be reported to the service. The machine is equipped with a longitudinal load moment indicator and stability system. The system will give the operator continuous information about the load moment and disable movements if there is a risk of turning over. This system only works to the design specification when the truck is static on consolidated, stable, and level ground. It does not prevent overturning of the machine during traveling, deceleration, turning, etc. In case of transmission overheat, it will switch to neutral. The engine must be left idling to cool the transmission down. If the transmission is running continuously too hot, over 100 degrees C, contact service personnel. If the temperature of hydraulic oil rises above a certain limit, engine will shut down automatically. If the batteries of the machine are empty and a battery charger is used, the main battery switch should be turned off. Otherwise, there is a risk of voltage peak that could damage the electronics of the machine. The main switch is located at the left of the main switch box. Refer to picture 2.1. The cabin can be lifted externally by turning the main switch on and using a button in the middle. Make sure the cabin is not hitting anything before lifting it. The battery can be recharged and start aid given via connector on the left. If the battery is left unused for 24 hours or more, turn off the main power switch to increase battery life. Tilt leveling function works by comparing angles for inclinometer sensor between chassis and lifting frame. It returns the lifting frame to the same angle that has been pointed in the function's calibration. The tilt level function starts after the button is released. Driver should not press button long, more than 3 seconds, because to mind end up to unplanned functions calibration. Adjust the forks to level position by using joystick. Press the tilt leveling button as long, more than 5 seconds, you hear the buzzer tone. Now the system is calibrated. Use joystick to change the angle of forks and use the tilt leveling function to return them to the planned position. Do this test a few times. Check the position of forks is planned leveling and recalibrate if needed. The pump can be used to make movements even when the engine is not running. The pump is only intended for short-term use, such as lifting the cab to make exiting easier Safety equipments are fire extinguisher on the right side front mudguard, safety belt on the driver's seat. Safety hammer is used for emergency exit purposes. The operator cabin is equipped with a safety hammer. With the hammer, any of the windows of the cabin can be broken in case the normal exit pathway is obstructed. Protect your eyes from the shards when breaking the window glass. Failure to do so might result in loss of vision. Cabin safety pins must be kept with the machine. Cabin lift securing pins must always be used while accessing under the cabin. Operator presence switch underset prevents the boom from moving when the driver is not sitting on the seat. Daily maintenance points to be checked every day. From engine needs to check engine oil level, add if needed. Check coolant level, add if needed. Check the intake air filter clogging indicator and empty the dust cup. Check the radiator pack, clean if dirty. Check fuel level, check DEF level. From transmission needs to check oil level, add if needed. Engine must be idling and transmission oil in working temperature while level is checked. Don't forget the cabin safety pins. From hydraulics needs to check oil level, add if needed. Adding hydraulic oil must be done through the return filter with the provided coupling. Check system visually for any leaks. From frame and lifting mechanism needs to check. Visually check the structure for any defects. From cabin mechanism needs to check the windshield washer liquid, add if needed. Check the driving lights. Test all the controls. From safety equipment mechanism needs to check that the fire extinguisher and the safety hammer are on their places and in operating condition. The safety belt function. Operator presence switch. Other points that needs to be checked. Check the tires for pressure and condition.